Welcome back to the Mighty Fuss podcast. Today is episode 27 with Jeannie Vega. Welcome, Jeannie.
Thanks for having me, Fuzz.
Today we're going to focus on the summary inquiry and what it is. I feel like a lot of people don't know exactly what the New York Show is doing. So today we'd just like to focus on this summary inquiry. What exactly is a summary inquiry?
So, summary inquiry is a remedy that can be found in the New York City Charter in section 1109. So, when you hear people say the 1109, that's kind of just slang for the summary inquiry, meaning that's where you can find this particular remedy. And the remedy is to hold a public servant accountable for neglect or violation of duty. So instead of going into court and suing the city or suing the state because a mayor or a governor, just say, or whatever city council member neglected or violated duty or violated you in some way, this is separate from a tort claim. You're not suing taxpayers. This is actually getting them to come in and explain why they thought it was okay to violate their duties. And it has to be something that there's not an open investigation for. So, and only a certain people can do this. And it's either five citizens who are taxpayers, or I believe it's 5 or 6 city council members, public advocate. There's a short list of people who can actually file a summary inquiry. And so 6 regular men and women who happen to be New Yorkers decided that they were going to file a summary inquiry against Mayor Eric Adams for violation of duty when it comes to the mandates key to the city, key to NYC, where he directed enforcement upon the men and women of New York City, and Alvin Bragg, the district attorney in Manhattan, because he was sent a copy of all the notices when we exhausted the administrative process with Eric Adams. He was sent the notices as well, with direction under 18 USC 4 that he does have a duty to investigate this or kick it to someone that can handle it if in the case he cannot. And he obviously did nothing. There is no open investigation about neglect of duty, a violation of duty, on behalf of the city or Manhattan, the county, in regards to Eric Adams. So Alvin Bragg, is in neglect of his duties and violation of his duties as well. So we brought the summary inquiry against him as well.
Okay, there's a lot of cases going on in New York City that are challenging the mandate. Is this case challenging the mandate?
So no. So we are not challenging the mandate, the constitutionality of the mandate, none of that, because politicians write policy. It's literally what they do, whether it's the legislature writing policy or whether it's a mayor writing an emergency executive order in this case, or an executive order. They do have the authority to do that. What we're challenging is the authority to direct enforcement on direct policy as law on the men and women. So, in other words, the mayor cannot use any type of enforcement as his personal gang to do his bidding. So he gave some direction and he said, listen, you're going to make sure that people are wearing face coverings. You're going to make sure that people have a card to prove their vax status. He's not allowed to enforce these things as law on the people. So that's what we're challenging, cannot direct enforcement. There is nowhere, he does not have promulgated authority anywhere within the documentation in which he takes an oath to uphold. And this is kind of where people get it wrong. They do have clear guidelines and rules that they have to follow, but under kind of the illusion of democracy that they are allowed to enforce whatever policy that they want as long as they make it public, and that 51% of the population who voted them in agrees with it, right? So they can do whatever. That's not the case. The Constitution and the rest of the founding documentation and the charters, in this case the New York City Charter, clearly outlines their responsibilities, where their jurisdiction lies and where their authority lies, and nowhere within any of those pieces of paper does it say that he can direct enforcement upon men and women. He doesn't have authority over men and women to direct enforcement. And that's what we challenged. The violation of duty came when he stepped outside the scope of his authority and directed enforcement and delegated authority to the businesses to make sure that, they restricted your rights and didn't allow you to come in and be served. The three-letter agencies that we know are not in the Constitution have zero authority over men and women. And this was confirmed with the Supreme Court, not that we needed them to, but they finally came to, and they overturned Chevron. So this is exactly what we're challenging, which is different than all of the other cases.
So the mandate itself is allowed to mandate city workers that work for the government. Where he stepped over the line is when they enforced the law against the private men and women.
So he actually he actually doesn't even have authority over certain employees. It's really more just his direct employees, which just say like a teacher isn't a direct employee of his, or a sanitation worker isn't a direct employee of his. So if you read the city charter, it's kind of it'll break down exactly who that authority lies over. So he can create a mandate. He can write whatever he wants. It's who he's directing that mandate at where he would be wrong. And in this case, Emergency Executive Order 1, which was originally written by de Blasio, clearly directs enforcement. And then that was renewed on January 1st of 2022 when Eric Adams came into office and immediately renewed that.
I think it's important to point out something that you brought light to 2 years ago, which was that the Department of Health would then enforce on the businesses.
Yeah.
But there was no law to say that they can't wear a mask or you have to show a vaccine pass. So what would the DOH come in and do? How would they violate the private business?
So they were creating rules that didn't exist. For instance, like I believe it was my sister's business. They came in and they were making sure that the same person didn't use the same pencil. So like two people couldn't use the same pencil, like something ridiculous like that. And they were keeping up with this. So there were all these guidelines that they put in. And if you didn't follow their guidelines, the Department of Health would essentially create a problem in the sense of say something like, bring in Department of Buildings, bring in the fire department to say that there was a problem with the building itself, and the codes that they were writing did not pertain to not like people being in the establishment without a mask, or people being within the business without a vax card. It was like having a hole in the door, in the wall that could be dangerous to customers, right? Or faulty light. These are the things that the codes referred to, because there were no laws on the books, quote unquote, policy on the books that would enforce vax cards or face coverings or whatever the case may be. So they kind of played with that, and people were just ignorant to it.
So they would punish the private business.
Yeah.
And this is kind of how they got along. Wow.
Yeah. Taking away liquor licenses, just shutting all these false things to shut the business down, making their lives a living hell just because they didn't comply with the policy. It was bullying.
Yeah, it sounds like extortion.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a timeline. How do they go about the summer inquiry? What are the 6 taxpaying New Yorkers do to start that summer inquiry?
So we filed in the courts in district court, and when we filed in district court, you either have to submit an affidavit, or in this case, a verified petition is what we did, stating that we had knowledge of the violations that were committed by Eric Adams and Alvin Bragg, and we submitted our exhausted administrative process, all our notices to Eric Adams. So that was basically all of our documentation and everything that he was in violation of that was submitted to the courts, and after that, it's basically a waiting game. You get the judge. In our case, there was a lot of obstacles thrown in front of us. No one contacted us to let us know that a judge had picked us up and we can come pick up the documentation and start serving people. And then Andrea was like, I think something's going on here. We decided that it's time to go down and kind of figure stuff out. They went down to the courts. It was Andrea and Teneri who went down to the courts and spoke to the court clerk, who was very unfriendly in this case, and basically did not want to help. Was like, well, why don't you get to work since you don't have that much time to serve? We had 2 days to serve, which is not really a proper amount of time to serve corporation counsel and the DA. So we got some help in some unlikely places like the New York City Sheriff and the U.S. Marshals, who gave us some great advice, and we were able to serve in a timely manner and get this summary inquiry filed and off and going.
So what is the scope of this case? Are you guys looking for financial compensation? What is the goal of this case?
So with the summary inquiry, this is not a tort claim, so there is no financial compensation. This is strictly to set precedent and to hopefully get a punishment, right? A proper punishment for the mayor and the DA who violated their duty. So we're looking for repercussions for their actions. That's what we're looking for. We're not looking to get paid in any way. We're not looking for anybody to hire us to do more of these. This is a lot of work. We're looking for repercussions to the actions of public servants who step outside the scope of their authority.
So what kind of filing is this?
So this is more of a special proceeding. So it's nothing like a tort claim. It's nothing like anyone has ever seen, pretty much, which is essentially why everyone's treating it as a tort claim. So this is a summary inquiry. This does not sue anyone. Our intentions are not to sue the city or sue the state. This is 100% to hold a public servant accountable. So even if it's money laundering, anything that would be a violation of duty, they can be held accountable. So it brings that particular public servant in to answer as to what they were thinking, why they thought it was okay to violate their duties, things like that. So this doesn't hold them the city or state accountable financially. This holds the individual accountable in their official capacity. So and what would happen is the judge will use his discretion and as to how that public servant would be punished, whether it be unseating or whatever the case may be.
Right now, we're waiting for the appellate court ruling. But why was it dismissed from the lower courts originally?
So there was a lot that kind of led on up to a couple of these things. But during the first oral argument, the ADA had filed documentation for a motion to dismiss. So never filed an actual motion to dismiss, but documentation in support of. That makes sense. So now we felt like he meant to file a motion because he had labeled the documentation motion to dismiss, in support of motion to dismiss, but didn't actually file a motion. Now, a motion is direction to the court. Since an officer of the court, like an attorney, can't actually send direction, they ask the court for things. That's what a motion is, asking the court for something. So the ADA filed documentation for a motion to dismiss, but never ever actually filed a motion. And because of that, the judge kind of looked at the documentation. Andrea, during the first oral arguments, explained that this was not a motion, that it was mislabeled. The judge agreed it was mislabeled, but then led the ADA into saying that he did this in error, right? That labeled an error, not that he meant to file a motion. So it was confirmed on the minutes that he never meant to file a motion to dismiss. That's what was said on the minutes. About a month later, the ADA tried to file a motion to dismiss. The court clerk kicked it back and said, nope, it's too late, and didn't allow him to file that motion. Well, one of our documentation that was filed suddenly became mislabeled on NYCEF, a motion to dismiss on behalf of the ADA. So the justice used that mislabeling as a cross motion because the corp counsel did file a motion to dismiss. So she used the mislabeled documentation as a motion to dismiss and the corp counsel's motion to dismiss to dismiss this matter as a cross motion. So using it as a cross motion to dismiss, and dismissed it on behalf of a cross motion that never existed. So that's one thing she dismissed this on, which complete error. And we have the timeline that clearly states that there was no motion, and then this suddenly turned into a motion, and then she utilized that to dismiss this based on a cross motion that never existed. That's one. Two, she used CPLR codes to dismiss this, which only pertain to tort claims, to Article 78s, things of that nature. This isn't a civil matter. We already said that. So these CPLR codes that she used can't be used to dismiss this case because it isn't a tort case. So that's the second thing she did. Then things like the authority aspect, completely kind of misconstruing what we're challenging, which is the direction of the enforcement, which we've driven home and we've stated several times, and saying that we're challenging the mandate itself, or challenging key to NYC, or challenging the mayor's authority to write an executive order, an emergency executive order, and that's not what we did. So kind of misconstruing what we're saying and then dismissing this, saying that, well, he does have authority to do these things under Executive Law 20, Executive Law 24, and mayoral power in the New York City Charter, Section 1. And none of those things that she wrote state anything about the mayor having the authority to direct enforcement. So she, again, misconstrued this and then dismissed this based on something that we didn't argue, and mentioning authority that doesn't exist. But that the whole thing, every reason why she dismissed this was basically an error on her part. So that's why we thought it was important to appeal and set the record straight. They never combated that the mayor has the authority to direct enforcement. They kind of danced around it and said he didn't actually direct enforcement, he just provided guidance. So they used different verbiage to try to combat this, because the mayor does not have authority over men and women, period. And they couldn't argue that.
So walk me through this. So right now you're in the appellate court. If the decision kicks it back to the lower courts and we get judgment in our favor, what happens to Eric Adams or Alvin?
So that's of the discretion of the court. So the justice would make a proper call on how they want to treat it and how what punishment should be handed down in this case. Best in all reality, even in the worst case scenario that she or he does not hand out the punishment that obviously should be handed out, in this case, setting precedent that the mayor doesn't have authority to enforce these things, or that three-letter agencies can't enforce things on the men and women. This is precedent that will be historic. Everything that comes down the pipeline, everyone's afraid of the next lockdowns, the next thing that's mandated, whether it's biometric stuff or more vaccines or whatever the case may be. They won't be able to enforce any of that because we've already set precedent that they cannot direct enforcement or enforce it on us. So they can write whatever they want. We took the knees out from under them. So that's the goal here, is take the enforcement out, and all of these people who write all this stuff, they have zero power. A Brad Hoylman, an Eric Adams, a Kathy Hochul, whoever it is, none of them have the power. You take out their enforcement unit and they're not so tough.
So Andrea Beru spoke in the appellate court. You were standing right by her. We've asked a couple of the members already what their take was on that. Sitting right there, what did you experience, witness, and how that discussion went?
I experienced a woman who came into this with the intentions to save herself and her special needs child when we were kicked out of school in 2019. And I watched her, every bit of education and all the reading and everything that she's done for the last couple of years. There was just a light behind her. Like, she was just driven. It was amazing, an absolute amazing thing to witness. That is my friend. So, growing together here, sharing education, and then watching her just destroy the courts, just destroy it. She destroyed the ADA. I don't think anybody can say differently, but just the way she spoke and the way she drove it home, even though when you get up there, it's kind of everybody against us, right? Because I mean, we're attempting to set precedent that nobody wants us to set. Nobody wants to make this ruling. Nobody wants to make this decision because this is huge, right? And she just made it very hard for them to find something, because she just drove oral arguments home. Corp counsel didn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, and the ADA just pretty much handed her the ability to kind of drive it home, and that she absolutely did.
With the oral arguments being live streamed, and now people are starting to see what the New York du jour is about, and trying to understand, what do you want them to take away from what they've seen on the live stream, the oral arguments?
So Andrea, regardless of all the obstacles, and Andrea made it clear that there were many obstacles on behalf of being pro se litigants, and the courts pretty much taking advantage of that and trying to exploit that, as Eric Dim said earlier in his interview, which was great, being able to break that down. This is what Andrea did was so powerful, but Andrea is a regular woman, just a mom, trying to create change. She's not an attorney. She doesn't get paid to do these things. She's not an aspiring politician of any kind. None of these things were rehearsed. This is her education over the last few years being put to work. And people, the regular man and woman who want to create some type of change, who acknowledge that there's so much wrong and don't know what to do, and just keep on, putting all their eggs in one basket with a particular politician, hoping that that person brings you to the other side of freedom. None of that is going to happen, and you'll hear Joy say regularly, no one's coming to save you. There's plenty of people providing great education out there, and it's time for people to do their own research. It's time for people to get educated on your unalienable rights, what public servants are, right, and what their job duties are, so you can hold them accountable to those job duties when they don't do what they're supposed to do. If you don't do your job at your place of employment, there's a good chance you're getting fired. And the people should be able to restore that hire and fire system. And that's exactly what our goal is to educate people free, because I was educated for free. My mentors took time out to educate me for free, so that I can utilize my education like I'm doing now, and I'm able to. We wrote all of our court documentation. No attorneys. No attorneys helped us write this. No AI. It was just 3 to 4 people. And wrote the meat and potatoes of the arguments, and then we had people help with screen sharing and commas and grammar, and it was just a group effort to get this done. But it was regular men and women, nobody that went to law school. None of us sat in 6 years of college for this. We never took a bar exam, and yet we killed it. We drove home every point. We made arguments, right? We used definition, case law, U.S. codes, whatever the case we need, whatever it is that we needed, and we were able to do that only based on our last 5 years of education. So if people just get educated, we've already kind of paved the way. There was no blueprint set before us, so we're kind of doing this just off the whim. Learning as we go, trial and error, but we're getting it done, and we're going to set precedent regardless of how. The people will create change with the courts, and the courts will essentially take direction from the people again. It's just up to us to make sure that everyone understands that they do take an oath to the Constitution, and they are public servants, and they have to do their job, and it's up to the people to make sure and direct them to do that job.
Powerful, very powerful. Where could they find the New York du jour online?
So our website is nydujour.info, and we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Telegram. And you can find us all there, as well as the information. We're going to start giving out a little bit more education. We're trying to put that together. We were overwhelmed. Obviously, we're writing all of this court documentations, the appeal brief response. So we're trying to kind of getting back to education and more filings. we're already looking. We're being sent in different directions, but there's so much we want to do. But look out for another filing, definitely.
Thank you so much, Jeannie Vega, for coming on today. Episode 27, and we're out.